race is tightening up.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. We've definitely got the momentum, and we've got so many people who are turning out to help us in volunteering and contributing to our campaign in these final days. And I think it's evidenced by the fact that my opponent seems to be hiding, kind of in lockdown mode, whereas we're getting out and talking to as many voters as we can, as often as we can, even when we're having mutual debates and forums, and she doesn't show up. I'm still there talking about the issues and drumming up additional support.
Well, I'd have to say, Rob, if I were the handler for Suzanne Bonamici, I would hide her too. Now, I can say that because I'm a talk show commentator, and I know you probably have to be a little more politically correct, but, I've known Suzanne Bonamici quite a while, worked with her, or worked by her side on certain issues in the legislature, and I've never seen anything with her other than just a party-line politician who just absolutely takes marching orders and does what her party says.
Well, it's deja vu all over again then, isn't it, Rob?
I love it. I hope you've been saying that a lot.
Well, last time that I ran in this seat, which you may recall 2 years ago, I ran against the congressman. And the last 2 months of that election, after our one debate, he essentially went into hiding. We never saw him again, and I had a very difficult time cutting through because of that.
Right.
And this time, the last debate we had, she didn't show up. I had an empty podium to debate. I think I won that one, by the way. At least I hope I did.
I'll bet that was closer with an empty podium than it was the last debate you actually had against her.
Perhaps so. But in the meantime, we're seeing, we know it's close. We know it's neck and neck right now because the amount of money that the other side is putting in to try to discredit me and deceive the voters and mischaracterize what I've said or what I haven't said and who I am. And so they wouldn't be doing that if they weren't very fearful that they're going to lose this seat, and we finally can put it in the hands of a business-friendly representative who knows how to grow jobs.
I think you're right about that. Yeah, if they didn't think it was close, they wouldn't be running the level of negative ads that they have been on you. And that kind of brings up the point, I'm sure you saw the Oregonian today, Jeff Mapes wrote a column about the negative advertising in CD1 and its effect. And here's my question to you. I mean, you've probably been outspent if you combine the DNCC's ads with, all the campaign spending, 3 or 4 to 1 on the negative advertisements. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, you've got that right.
And do you think that there's a bit of a backlash, and the polling is showing that right now?
It's hard to know exactly. As you political pundits know, Rob, the final poll that matters is the one a week from tonight, and we'll know exactly why people cast their votes the way they did. But I do believe, I'm absolutely convinced, in fact, that there is a backlash against those in the political elite, essentially in the Portland area, who are once again trying to dictate how this election goes. And voters are tired of that. And it's not just voters in the suburbs and the rural areas of our districts. It's voters right here in Portland who, recognize that Suzanne Bonamici has not been good for business. She has not been good for the middle class. She's never seen a tax increase that she didn't vote for in Salem. And they recognize that if jobs really is the number one issue facing this district, not to mention our state, shouldn't we put someone in this seat who's actually created a job before? As opposed to someone who's basically just been living off the government and has never had to sign her name on the front of a paycheck and doesn't know what goes into doing that. We can't allow beginners to go to Congress who've never done what we need done in this country, and that is job growth.
There's a caller who is asking a question right now whether you have taken a look at the Stock Act, and have you taken a position on that? That's the act that would prevent sitting congresspeople from profiting from inside information about corporate America.
Yes, I have taken a look at it, and I support it. It's just the kind of insider peddling that causes people like me to get up off the couch and want to run for office because we're tired of the political elite basically taking control of our system. And I got to say, another thing about that that's really increasingly upsetting the people that I'm talking to and why they're so charged up to help us and why we've got such traction. If you look at the ads that are being run against me and the things that are being said, I can take a hit. I'm a big boy, and I knew what I was getting into. But what really bothers me about it is that they are demonizing the very people we need right now, and that is entrepreneurs and small business owners, the people that we have to rely on to take risk and invest. And so if they're successful winning this campaign because they have demonized and tried to suggest that anyone who's taken a risk in this state, who's tried to hire and has had bumps along the road is bad, then we're going to continue to see our government being run by insiders, by career politicians, by bureaucrats, by lawyers, and that obviously hasn't gotten us anywhere. In fact, it's gotten us into this tremendous hole that we find ourselves. So anything to create more transparency and bring more people, just like me, off the street into the political process, I definitely support.
I think you're going to see more of that demonization of entrepreneurs, risk takers, and even wealthy people tonight in the State of the Union address. What do you expect to hear from President Obama tonight?
Well, first of all, with all apologies to him, I won't be able to watch all of it because of campaign activities. But yeah, I think, we're entering into a hot political season, and chances are that he'll have his talking points, that he'll want to stay, focused on issues or positions that will drum up his base of support. I would love to see leadership. I would love to see a president that says, you know what, the problems that we're facing right now as a country are bigger than any party. They're bigger than any candidate or current elected official. They do require that somehow we reach common ground, because the people back home, especially here in the 1st District, we're suffering as a result of that lack of leadership, of that political courage. The fact that he turned away from the Keystone Project, I think, is a great example of answering the special interests as opposed to the interests of our country right now.
Well, he gave that speech in his State of the Union address in 2011. He called for working together and bipartisanship, and he said, we're not going to move anywhere if we don't both come together and make decisions together. And then he proceeded to spend the entire year demonizing Republicans, calling them stupid, saying they weren't smart enough to understand his jobs plan unless he broke it into a bunch of individual pieces. I mean, he spent the year doing exactly the opposite of what he said in his State of the Union address last year.
It's interesting you bring that up. A lot of people have asked me, with all the vitriol that's been thrown at you, Rob, and with $2 million worth of negative advertising, how can you go back there once you win and actually work with those people? Aren't you just disgusted by what they're doing to you? And I recognize what they're doing is they're just playing a big fat game right now. They're trying to deceive voters. They're trying to distort my record as a job creator. And yet, what I have to do is I have to have enough courage to just wipe it off, brush off the dirt once we're back there, and have, and frankly, be big enough to reach my hand across and say, you know what, I know that you didn't want me to be here, but the fact is I'm in the majority, and as a member of the majority party, I have the ability to move this agenda, whereas if my opponent would have won, she'd be in the minority party. And can do very, very little in the minority party as a freshman. So if Oregon really wants to see progress, we need to give this election to someone who's going to be able to have a say in the issues that matter to Oregonians right now as a member of the majority party, not just this year, but for the next 3 years, most likely, even the next 5 or 7 years for all we know. That's a very powerful position for us to be in, and we haven't had that kind of influence in Congress in a long, long time, especially here. I'm speaking of the Portland region.
Right. Rob Cornilles, one more question, one more topic before I let you go, and that is the issue of the county timber payments. It's in the news again today. Congressman Walden and Congressman DeFazio are trying to come up with a plan that would allow more of the federal-owned Oregon timber to be logged, and then part of that money used to keep our counties solvent. And the environmentalists are now pitching a hissy fit, basically. And they're saying, oh my gosh, if this plan goes through as it stands now, there might, in fact, be more logging on federally owned forests. It seems a little bit ironic, but yeah, that's kind of the point. Have you talked with Congressman Walden, or have you studied the plan they're trying to come up with at all?
No, actually, I have spoken to the congressman about this, and not just him, but I've spoken to other members of Congress who serve on key committees as it relates to our national forests and our parks, etc. I am very supportive of that type of, frankly, bipartisan approach that Congressman Walden and Congressman DeFazio are putting together. I don't know all the details because, frankly, all the details have not been written.
That's right.
But the fact is, our timber community throughout the state, they did not ask to be put into a depression. They want to be in those forests managing one of our greatest natural resources, and historically our greatest natural resource. I trust them to do it responsibly. I trust them to utilize technology and innovation in a way that will preserve our forests and allow them to create jobs and to produce greater interdependence on energy sources here locally, as opposed to looking overseas for it. And so, contrary to my opponent, who, one paper described her as excruciatingly cautious, when there's a good idea like this that will get people back to work and help us do what we do best, I want to be right there at the table helping it move forward.
Rob Cornilles, good luck in the last week of your campaign. Let's bring it to the finish line.
Thanks so much, Rob. Cornillesforcongress.com is how the listeners of Lars can help us out in these last days.
That's great. That was Rob Cornilles, candidate for 1st Congressional District, only 7 more days.